Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the DLF Trade Show on the DLF YouTube channel. We took a week off because let me tell you how just wonderful my family is. We believe so much that sharing is caring, that my beautiful, amazing goddess of a wife brought strep throat into our house, and
No.
she loves us so much that she shared it with my son. My son loves me so much that he shared it with me, but I am that selfish jerk who just didn't share it with my daughter. So she got out
Terrible.
nice and easy. But yeah, so doing this show last week was just, we'll call it not in the cards. But we are mostly recovered. We are alive. I am not transmitting any germs through the microphone, through the internet, into Addison's ears. We are, or to yours. So we're good. And where we left off on our last show was we were talking about tops of positions. We did quarterback, we did running back. So now's when we get to, we're getting to wide receivers. And it was a very quick conversation about who we were going to talk about. And I mean, let's jump right in, right? Let's talk about the wide receiver one. It's still Justin Jefferson. I can't imagine that changed. If anything, Chase seemed to drop for a few people. CeeDee Lamb pushed his way up for a lot of people. I think people are coming around to how good St. Brown has been. Like, he seems to be pushing into that 4 spot, but I don't think anyone is challenging Justin Jefferson for wide receiver one right now.
He's so freaking good. And there's the news is coming out that he is wary of signing a long-term contract with the Vikings until he figures out what their long-term solution at quarterback is. So it seems like he's trying to protect himself as well too, and not get stuck with, a really bad quarterback, which would be good for fantasy and for Dynasty if he ends up signing somewhere else that has like a phenomenal QB.
So I'm not worried at all about his situation. Let's put it that way. So let's jump into these trades. 12-team, 1 quarterback, though I guess it doesn't really matter because there's no picks or quarterbacks involved. Justin Jefferson for Breece Hall and Jackson Smith-Njigba. So when I look at this specific trade, my big problem is pivoting to running back. The running back being the more valuable spot. Justin Jefferson at 999.3. Breece Hall himself is in at 809.9. That's not that. I mean, it's a 200-point difference, which is late first-ish, I think. So like that's a sizable difference between the two of them. And of course, Jackson Smith-Njigba is 548.4. This side totals 1358.3. So again, this is an overpay. I don't think I can do this though. Value-wise, clearly this comes out way ahead in the package side. I think the problem is, while I love Jackson Smith-Njigba, I'm not trading away Justin Jefferson for anything that isn't a sure thing. Breece Hall, sure thing. We've seen it. Hopefully Aaron Rodgers comes back. That offense takes 17 or 18 steps forward. One just isn't enough. Do we know who the offensive coordinator in Seattle is yet? I don't remember hearing anything about that.
I don't actually think they've made a move. I think you're right.
So that would be the next spot. Like, if they brought in someone crazy good, who I don't even know who it would be at this point. Like, I think Eric Bieniemy doesn't have a job right now. If he wants to go to Seattle, that would make me feel a little better about it, just because I trust his offensive mind. But like, I need someone of that same value. Okay, hold on. Let's go to 548 in here, and I'm gonna scroll a bit. I mean, Ayuk is right around there.
Puka? Oh, they got Ryan Grubb. He was Alabama's offensive coordinator. They pulled him from college.
I'm not ready to trust that yet, but that's
interesting. A couple days ago. I forgot about that.
Tyreek Hill. I know the age is a huge swing on that one, but like, we know he's going to score a lot of points for the next 2 years. Puka's a little higher up, but that I would feel even a little better about because of what we've seen. And I'm good with that. Ayuk is a little light for me. I'd love to see what happens with him
Mm-hmm.
Oh, he's on his option this year, right?
Yeah, but he talked about all this stuff came out after the Super Bowl about how
Yeah.
like he wanted out of San Fran or anything like that. It could be some sort of like AJ Brown like sign and or trade and sign kind of move that the Tennessee did with AJ.
But yeah, like I need a much steadier wide receiver to make me feel good about this. Of course, I can sound silly in a couple of months if JSN comes out as a top 15 scoring wide receiver this season, but it's close. Value-wise, it's fine, but I think I just need a different player in that JSN spot.
Yeah, JSN I think is and I think it is weird just moving from the security of the elite wide receiver over to the elite running back, because I mean, Breece Hall is fantastic. I think that he has the shot to be the RB1 overall in 2024 for fantasy. And I think that he's going to be phenomenal. But at the same time, this is not really a really good analogy, but it's kind of what came to my mind of like, this feels like if you own like a $600,000 house and then you decided to sell it, bought a $250,000 house, and then use the rest of that money to buy a Lamborghini. Like, that's kind of what this feels like. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like you
fantastic imagery, though.
You moved so much of that equity, that safety and equity, and then just shifted it into something that is gonna deteriorate and lose value and all faster. That. Yeah, it's all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, Jackson Smith and Jigba is not enough to make me move off of Justin Jefferson to go to Breece Hall. Even though the analyzer says that it absolutely should be. I just, it's something that's the dynasty theory of it doesn't make sense to me.
So the next trade is more interesting for sure. 10-team superflex. Justin Jefferson for Chris Olave, Drake London, the 203 and the 207. Now, I need to be honest. These picks mean literally nothing to me in this trade.
They're those picks that add value to the people that value seconds.
I love seconds. They're fun. They're great trade chips. They're fun to throw darts. But if I'm trading away Justin Jefferson, I am barely valuing those.
Right. Now, to be fair, in a 10 team, the 2.03, you know, that's not, that's the 2.01. So it's almost the first.
Look at me.
Yeah, when you're measuring it against Justin Jefferson, it's kind of meaningless. But
see, here's my problem. Justin Jefferson only being 24 years old and being so young. Like, yeah, you're aging down a little bit. You're diversifying your, not diversifying because that's, but you're breaking apart your main asset. I guess that might be sort of somewhat a correct usage of that word. I don't think so. It feels wrong.
Sure. You're breaking down a 24 point per game to 2 14 point per games.
Yeah. In the long run, it could be fine for your lineup. In the long run, I want both of these players to take huge steps forward this year because I believe they're both talented and now their situations should be better.
Hopefully.
Saints, please bring in a real quarterback. So that's cool. But again, I'm trading away Justin Jefferson and getting two maybes. And I can't do that, especially in a 10-team league where, again, this might be where players you have to start matters more than how many teams are in the league. But chances are in a 10-team start 10, you're still caring more about studs. If this is 10-team start 11 or 12, it's more along the lines of you don't change how you would have valued it in a 12-team league.
Sure.
So I that makes me lean even more Justin Jefferson here. And like, again, like maybe if we put the 203 and 207 values together, like I said, it was like 300-ish. Let's scroll. Like, let's try and keep it a little younger. I mean, Jaden Reed and George Pickens don't add that much. Rasheed Rice. Yeah, that still needs to get updated. It's 277.
He's way too low.
February
will change that.
Nico Collins. Like at that point, if this was Olave, London, and Collins, that would make me feel a lot better and probably lean me towards taking this because, yes, that is three maybes, but those are three maybes I feel good about, at least.
Sure.
And all of that much better than the 203 and 207. But still I'm only doing that if my team is just dead besides Justin Jefferson. Like, there's no real reason to do that unless you are in shambles and you have no picks and you know.
I think you highlighted one of the difficulties with trading for a player like Justin Jefferson is it gets to be a point where you're not offering enough to make the other person say that it's worth losing Justin Jefferson. And then whenever you say, well, what would you need? And you say Olave, Drake London, and Nico Collins, I think would be good. Then that gets to a point where it's probably not worth it to move those three for Justin Jefferson because then that's too much. That's one of the difficulties of trading for these guys. That's why whenever something happens and, you know, they suffer an injury like Justin Jefferson did, he's out for 6 weeks. The discount on their trade value is not, I can now get them cheaper, 80%, 90% cheaper. It's now you can actually probably acquire them for 100% value rather than 110, 120% value,
Yes, sir. Yep.
That's the difficulty there. And this is one of those trades where, I'm always trying to upgrade it at wide receiver. I love doing 2-for-1s to upgrade. And especially if you can move some of these kind of questionable QB2s, guys that we expected to break out, but didn't, but there's still hope for them, like Olave, like Drake London, like a couple other names of guys that maybe they were that, and now they've seemed to be just wide receiver 2s, like a DK Metcalf or, a Devonta Smith, kind of those guys. If you have a couple of them and you're able to move 2 of them to get up into this top tier, maybe it's not Justin Jefferson, but it's CeeDee Lamb or Jamar Chase. Those are deals that I want to do, and this is a perfect example of that kind of deal.
All right, let's move on to our next player, who is a guy we've talked about plenty, and it's CeeDee Lamb. Whether he is the top of your second tier, the bottom of your first tier, it's not Jamar Chase, because Jamar Chase just feels too... Though he did drop for a lot of people this season, especially with the health, but it's really weird to penalize someone who we know is that good, who just played most of a season with Jake Browning or a hurt Joe Burrow. Like, it seems really weird.
He himself got hurt.
Yeah. So like, it's really weird that people are kind of dropping his value a bit, but it's happening. But still, to me, he's still easy wide receiver 2. Lamb is my wide receiver 3. I know, no hate or whatever for anyone who has that in a different order, but I felt like there's at least enough of a gap between Jefferson and Lamb that Lamb was worth talking about here also.
Sure. Yeah. I think he's synonymous with, we're not talking about Chase and we're not talking about Amon-Ra St. Brown. So all 3 of their values feel kind of synonymous, that whatever we talk about that works for Lamb should also work for the other 2.
Yes, sir. 12 teams, super flex. Ooh. CeeDee Lamb and Trevor Lawrence. Just give me that side right now. I don't care what the other side looks like. Anthony Richardson and the 102. Yeah, give me CeeDee Lamb and Trevor Lawrence. All right, one more time. Let me. CeeDee Lamb and Trevor Lawrence for Anthony Richardson and the 102. CeeDee Lamb 839.5. Trevor Lawrence 650.3. Total 1490. Anthony Richardson 625.1. 102 619.1. Total 1244.2. Yeah, this is like, I don't. What are your, again, aging down from a 24 to from 2 24-year-olds? Like, I don't get, like, this is, I'm out on Trevor Lawrence. I want to re-roll on one of these young QBs and give me the mobile QB from last year. Like, that's like, you're going to go grab Daniels and Richardson and have some nice mobile quarterbacks for your fantasy roster.
Now, what if I shape this as that 102 becomes Marvin Harrison Jr.? So you have the wide receiver, quarterback.
Like, I get it. There's a good chance Marvin Harrison Jr. probably jumps in at wide receiver 5, 6, 7. Like,
yeah, he's in that range.
AJ Brown, I'm still there with. I still really, really like him. He's still really, really good. But honestly, he's probably close to equal value to Harrison for me. Probably Harrison might be worth more because he's a rookie.
Right.
Or will be. It's not even happened yet. But I mean, to me, it doesn't really matter which of those you slide in, because Harrison Jr. and those next two quarterbacks, again, assuming Caleb Williams goes first overall, are going to be very, very close in value. It's, at least to me, for now. Of course, landing spots, whatever happens, can change things plenty. But I believe in Trevor Lawrence. If I told you No. Let me ask you this question. What do you think the scoring difference was between Tua and Trevor Lawrence this past season?
Oh, it had to have been minimal, like less than a point per game.
14 total points.
Less than a point per game.
Less than a point per game.
Yep.
Like, we straddle Trevor Lawrence with this horrible season. And Tua was MVP for like half of it. Like, now, don't get me wrong. Like, it became clear very quickly that Tua could not keep up what he did in the first few games. Like, the Dolphins' offense wasn't going to keep doing that, especially once Achane started rushing for touchdowns. Like, that just ruins everything. But like, I believe in Trevor Lawrence. I believe he is still in that. He's unfortunately the top of the third tier until he shows whatever. To me, he's still the bottom of the second tier. But CeeDee Lamb is just that good. I think is in fact, like the analyzer shows, just worth more than everything else in this.
Mm-hmm.
I'll take the safety of knowing that I have Trevor Lawrence, who in a terrible season is going to still score me around 21 points per game.
Yeah, that's essentially how I see it as well too. It's just, if you want to cancel out Lawrence and Anthony Richardson just as potential upside quarterbacks that you're hoping that Trevor Lawrence kind of returns to what he did a couple years ago. And I saw, I don't know if this was a hyperbole tweet or anything, but it was like something about Trevor Lawrence had like 6 or 7 touchdowns last year that weren't touchdowns, that were missed by like a yard or two, essentially, just because either his wide receiver dropped it or they were out of bounds by 6 inches.
Someone put together a video montage of all passes incomplete in the end zone. Zay Jones needs to work on dragging his toes. And unfortunately, there was like 2 or 3 that hit Ridley in the chest and just
like, were not it.
Apparently if he leaves his feet, his hands just go away, because he was like diving to the side and like pulled one of these, and it just, like, so many people were like, and again, maybe they were bad throws, maybe he had to get it over the defensive backs, and like they ran out of space. Like, they could have been not the receiver's fault, but there were a lot of should have been, could have been touchdowns for Trevor Lawrence this past season.
I remember that as a conversation a lot throughout the year as well too. That was the reason, like, he had a lot of games where he only had 1 passing touchdown, but he should have had 2, maybe even 3. Yeah. So there's still upside, I think, for Trevor Lawrence. We'll have to see what the offseason does, whether or not they re-sign Ridley, whether or not they draft somebody else. T. Higgins, the Clemson connection back at it. Anthony Richardson also obviously presents massive upside, but to me, the quarterbacks more or less cancel out. If you prefer one or the other, I don't necessarily care. The difference to me between this trade is, if that is Marvin Harrison Jr. at the 1.02, you want him to be CeeDee Lamb. So why not just take CeeDee Lamb? So I will pay that additional whatever to just have CeeDee Lamb.
But let's move on to this next trade, because it's a little more interesting, because we literally talked about it at the beginning of this conversation. 12-team superflex, CeeDee Lamb for Kyler Murray and Zay Flowers. Now, of course, Zay Flowers became a little bit more of an interesting topic after having, I believe it was domestic violence allegations against him. Mm-hmm. But you talked about not doing a straight swap of Justin Jefferson for Kyler Murray. CeeDee Lamb, 839.5. Kyler Murray, 669.4, which to me is still a little low. It's overall rank of 18, an ADP of 18.25. By the way, CeeDee Lamb, overall rank of 11.38, ADP of 11.5. So CD still getting drafted decently before Kyler, but how far away is that 1-for-1 to you? Is it 170 points in an analyzer?
No, I remember when I said about taking Justin Jefferson over Kyler Murray, that was more just because there's still some question marks with Kyler, but I feel like he is so primed to get back up into that Lamar Jackson, Justin Herbert, Joe Burrow tier. Especially, I've seen countless mock drafts saying that the Cardinals are taking Marvin Harrison Jr.
It would make so much sense if they did.
So if they re-sign Hollywood Brown, even if they don't re-sign Hollywood and they take Marvin Harrison at 104, like, that is just going to be such a positive value change for Kyler Murray, on top of the fact that he's a mobile quarterback. I am so ready to put him into that top tier that it's really not a massive difference between Lamb and Kyler Murray right now. I think the only thing that's holding me back is that it's not necessary to trade Lamb for Kyler straight up, that you are able to, and this trade proves it, even if it was done a couple weeks ago, and there's changing things with Zay Flowers' value right now, but this proves that you don't need to make that move. But it might be smart to get a quarterback in Kyler Murray. He's really the only quarterback, I think, below that second tier that I'd be willing to make this move for. Like, I don't think I overly feel confident doing this for Dak. We talked about Lawrence. Anthony Richardson has the upside as well, too, but is less secure than Kyler. Tua, Trevor Lawrence, we talked about, not doing it for Brock Purdy. So I'm 100% in on making a deal like this, because I do think that Lamb and Kyler are a lot closer than people want to give it credit for. And if you get a player that maybe it's not Zay Flowers, but a player like Zay Flowers, then I think that would be great.
I'm with you. I think Lamb and Kyler are closer than they are, because let's not forget, coming off of a bad injury, Kyler had his worst points per game season and finished as the QB 10.
Terrible.
Let me do this one more time. Everything Addison said before is absolutely correct. Kyler should be in your tier 2, and one more year where he finishes as the QB 5 or 6 again, and I'm fine just throwing him at the top of that tier. Finishes the QB 1, and he can go up with Allen and Mahomes. But that's a little too ahead of everything. Again, switching out Zay Flowers for another player of the same value, and at this point, it doesn't need to be that solid of a player. I know in the calculator, Rashee Rice is 277. He's probably, after this round of ADP, going to get pushed up ahead of above of 392. But
easily.
If this is Kyler and Rashee Rice, I think you kind of smash that one, right?
Yep, absolutely. But I mean, Zay Flowers could be a lot of those wide receivers in that kind of tier. It could be, Tank Dell.
T. Higgins.
It could be Drake London. It could be.
I mean, if we're trying to score points, Deebo Samuel.
Deebo works as well too. Like that, it really just could be anybody in that tier. And you might even be able to dip. Like I might be comfortable dipping a little bit lower down to a player that I feel more confident in than maybe a lot of other people, like a Christian Kirk kind of player or a Hollywood Brown kind of player, Chris Godwin. Like that is the absolute lowest that I'm going. But it's really like, yeah, I'd probably still do it.
Yeah.
More in the belief of Kyler.
We're not even taking a big step. Let's take a moderately sized human step down and talk about that next tier down. A player who is still up there, again, a guy we did talk about before, but also we said isn't in necessarily that second tier, but still up there. Let's talk about Puka. Because first of all, it is very fun to say Puka Nacua's name. So let me say, if this was Puka Nacua's best season ever, would you be surprised?
No. But
can he get a little worse than this and still be freaking great?
Yes. That's always that line to me is always so infuriating to me whenever people use that as a reasoning for why we should sell somebody. Of like, that was their greatest season that they are probably ever going to have in their career. So what we should just sell them. But so he had 105 receptions for almost 1,500 yards and 6 touchdowns. What if I told you next season he had 100 receptions for 1,350 yards and 5 touchdowns? Like that's just so bad. That's terrible. It's the worst season than what he just had, but still better than 90% of NFL wide receivers.
Exactly. So I get it. I get needing to, if names didn't matter, if draft capital didn't matter, if needing to see things multiple times didn't matter, Puka Nacua would be a top 3 or 4 wide receiver. But his name is Puka Nacua. He was drafted in the
5th.
And undrafted in a lot of our rookie drafts. So he's only wide receiver 6.
So low.
Come on, get it together, everybody. Just show the man some respect. But again, that just shows that he belongs in the conversation of what we're having right now. And oh man, so this comes out on Thursday, right?
Mm-hmm.
So on the same day this comes out, my Trading Post article comes out. I did not talk about Puka, but I did talk about Justin Fields. And I did use this exact trade that we're about to talk about.
Nice.
So let's jump into it. So 12-team superflex, Puka Nacua and Justin Fields for Joe Burrow. Puka Nacua 628.1, love it. Justin Fields 417.2, total of 1045.4. Joe Burrow 817.5 on his own. So again, overpaying for the two, overpaying to get the better asset. You know, we're doing what we're supposed to be doing to make this kind of feel right. I think I really like both sides of this. Here's the thing. What this came down to, I'm going to try and not use the exact same words because I literally wrote it like at the end of the day yesterday. I think that Justin Fields is going to be starting somewhere. Justin Fields it won't take much for his situation to get better. I love DJ Moore. Cole Kmet's okay. That offensive line was really, really bad. The offense was run really, really bad, poorly. Sorry, that was bad English. But there's a good chance that he goes to a team that wants to compete, which means they should be better. Like, don't forget, the Steelers did well-ish with crap at quarterback. Like, so going to the Steelers isn't necessarily a bad thing right now. I think they have the 20th pick overall. So, like, if you had to trade the 220 and like a 4th or a 5th to go get Justin Fields, like, you do that. Absolutely. I don't think anyone's giving up a 1st for Fields at this point. But again, not the point. We're talking about Puka. So if I have Joe Burrow, who is fantastic, who's really, really good, if T. Higgins does walk, even though it seems like they're going to tag him, which just will hurt my soul in every way, shape, or form, like, just give the man a contract or don't. I don't want to live with this 1-year thing. They're going to replace the talent of T. Higgins with someone else. Like, they're not going to let this offense falter. So I'm not worried about Joe Burrow whatsoever. If the dude is healthy, the dude is very, very good. I was never concerned about his completion percentage or his touchdown percentage because he and his team are that good. If you are gutsy, if you have a lot of chutzpah and you have Joe Burrow on your team and you need to beef up the rest of your team a little bit, like, you know, you had Devontae Adams or like Steph Diggs, these older players that maybe they still, you know, Diggs fell off, whatever that, like, maybe that was a talent thing, maybe that was an attitude thing, whatever. But like, the scoring is maybe there, but the value is definitely not. You want to bolster the wide receiver room. I love this move because the point per game difference between Burrow and Fields is probably going to be 2 to 4 points a game.
I mean, to me, there's definitely the security of Joe Burrow on the one side of this, like exactly what you said. Like, if you don't believe in Justin Fields, I feel like this is a good trade just to eliminate a lot of question marks, go up and get Joe Burrow.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, I do feel like this is also a good deal if you're willing to take on a little bit more risk of Justin Fields, of him still being a starter somewhere, whether it's Pittsburgh, Denver, Atlanta, you know, Tennessee, like any of those kind of places where they could make an upgrade at the quarterback position. Then he would be really good for fantasy football for the next year, 2, maybe even 3 years. And then you get Puka Nacua, who is, he himself is just such a talented wide receiver that I don't really care about, you know, if Matthew Stafford is not the quarterback in a year or 2, or if Sean McVay decides to retire and move on from the game of football. You know, I don't really care about all of that. If Cooper Kupp is not an issue because he proved that it wasn't an issue last year, Puka himself is just so good that I think that this is a good deal on both sides. It just really depends on the risk tolerance that you're willing to take on with Justin Fields. And if that risk leads you to taking the safety of Joe Burrow, then I think it's a good deal. If you're a little bit more risk tolerant, Fields and Puka, I think, is a phenomenal deal for just Joe Burrow.
But let's move on to the next one, which is more wide receiver centric. So it'll be a little bit more about Puka himself. Puka and a 25 first for Garrett Wilson, Deebo Samuel, and a 25 second. Now, this is interesting because Puka 628, a 25 first, 259 for a total of 887. Caution, Team B is giving up the highest value asset and the most pieces in the deal because Garrett Wilson is 695.6. Now, again, this is splitting an already split hair of 50-something points in the analyzer. But who do you have higher, Puka or Garrett Wilson?
I have Puka. I'd rather have Puka than Garrett Wilson. Give me the guy who just put up 1,500 yards.
Against the guy who should be putting up 1,500 yards.
Right. And I totally get that, you know, Garrett Wilson as a talent, I think is much more talented than Puka. I mean, not much more, I think is strong. I think Garrett Wilson is more talented as a wide receiver than Puka Nacua. And especially, like, I think this Jets team could go absolutely ballistic in 2024 with Aaron Rodgers back and fully healthy. I think he's going to have a massive chip on his shoulder to prove to everybody that he is still good. Breece Hall is going to be phenomenal. Garrett Wilson, I think, is only going to benefit from Aaron Rodgers having a chip on his shoulder. Garrett Wilson could absolutely go nuclear and have a top 5 season this year. But, then we get questions of what happens after Aaron Rodgers. Is Rodgers the long-term solution for 2025, for 2026? Same questions that we have with Puka for Matthew Stafford, except Puka just put up a 1,500-yard season with Cooper Kupp on a okay team, like a playoff team. Yeah. I want Puka. You're splitting hairs. I think they could both be in the same tier. I wouldn't disagree with anybody if you had Garrett Wilson as a tier ahead of Puka or Puka a tier ahead of Garrett Wilson, depending on how you feel about Puka and what tier he belongs in. To me, I just want Puka over Garrett Wilson. Now, when you get to this trade itself, Puka and Garrett Wilson, for the most part, cancel out. I'm taking Debo in a second over 25 first. So that's really the crux of the trade and where the difference between the two sides lies.
Yeah, and again, this might more than likely be one of those things where if I have the Puka and 25 first side, I probably just reject it because I don't care enough about making that swap from Puka and Garrett Wilson that, like, yeah, Debo in a second for the first is fine, but like, feel like that alters the state of my team a little bit. Though it does, again, like, it's so weird because like you're a little more unsure of Garrett Wilson than you are of Puka, but you're pretty dang sure about Debo Samuel. Like, I wanted to be off on Debo Samuel. Like, I try. Like, every year I try to be off on Debo Samuel. I'm done trying. He's good. And as long as he's healthy and that offense is running the way they want it to, Debo's getting the ball a lot. And which just makes me want them to move on from IU because that dude deserves more than 3 catches in the Super Bowl. All right, but that is our last trade. So we are calling it quits on the DLF Trade Show and the DLF YouTube channel. Russ Fisher at Dynasty Outhouse, Addison Hayes at Amaze Hayes _. We'll catch you next time.